All right, get ready to explore something that might just change how you see your family forever.
Yeah.
We're talking birth order.
Ooh, fun.
Today, we're diving deep with The Birth Order book by Dr. Kevin Laban,
Oh, yeah, he spent years.
a psychologist who's basically
Yeah.
unpacking how our spot in the family tree
Right.
could actually shape.
It's really interesting because a lot of people think they know birth order, right?
Right.
Like, oh, the firstborn is the responsible one. The youngest is always spoiled.
Totally. Yeah.
And Dr. Leman goes way beyond those stereotypes, right? He's not just scratching the surface.
So he calls it functional birth order.
Yeah,
So it's not set in stone just because of when you were born.
right.
So like a big age gap between you and your siblings
Yeah.
or blended family dynamics,
All that.
it can totally shake things up.
It's like this hidden code almost
Yeah.
in families.
Yeah.
And Dr. Leman gives some amazing real-world examples in the book.
Oh, I know.
Think about Herb Kelleher,
Yeah.
the guy who built Southwest Airlines,
Mm-hmm.
lastborn with a huge age gap,
Mm-hmm.
and he ends up
Yeah.
running this multi-billion-dollar company, you know?
Okay, so before we go too deep into that,
Yeah.
let's lay some groundwork.
Oh, yeah.
What are the classic birth order types?
Right.
And what are some of those, like,
Yeah, the tendencies.
got the
Okay, so we have the firstborns,
yeah.
often seen as the driven achievers,
Mm-hmm.
always going for perfection.
Yeah.
And then there are the middle children.
Right.
They're the masters of diplomacy,
Oh, yeah.
navigating
What
between
direction are you?
all the siblings.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the lastborns,
Right.
the charmers.
Uh-huh.
They often use wit and a little bit of mischief to get their way.
Totally.
And we can't forget the only children,
Oh, right. Yeah.
those who get all the attention,
Yeah.
but they maybe miss out on that chaos and negotiation that
Right.
comes with sibling.
Yeah, having to share and all that.
Exactly. But Dr. Leman is very careful to say
Yeah.
these are tendencies, not guarantees.
Right.
We're shaped by so much more than
Of course. Yeah.
just when we were born.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
Because I was reading about how Dr. Leman analyzes celebrities
Yes.
through this lens.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fascinating how he links like Donald Trump
Mm-hmm.
and Richard Nixon's behaviors to their birth order.
Right.
They're both firstborns,
Yeah.
but in such different ways.
Totally different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It shows that it's not about putting people in boxes.
Right.
It's more like having this new set of glasses to see how family dynamics might have shaped someone's approach to, like,
Yeah.
leadership, relationships, even their sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
It impact everything.
Speaking of humor,
Yeah.
Dr. Lemon himself is a lastborn.
Yeah.
He talks about being that classic class clown growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but he had older siblings with a big age gap.
Right.
So it's not just like he was the spoiled baby that,
Exactly. He wasn't
fix
just the
it.
stereotypical lastborn.
Right.
Yeah. That's his own personal experience with functional birth order.
Oh, totally.
Even though he was technically the youngest,
Right.
family dynamics pushed him to be more independent,
Yeah.
almost like an only child in some ways.
That's so interesting.
It is.
And he points out that this isn't just some random theory
No, not at all.
that he uses in like
Yeah.
case studies.
Yeah.
He uses it with his own family.
In his own life.
His youngest daughter
Yeah,
acts more like a firstborn
because of that.
because of the age difference with her siblings.
Yeah, the age gap.
Organized, a bit bossy.
Uh-huh.
It totally tracks with what we're talking about.
It's like the pieces start clicking into place when you
Yeah.
think about it this way.
Right.
Those quirks and patterns in families,
Yeah.
suddenly they make a lot more sense.
I know. I'm already thinking about all my friends and their families.
I know, me too.
It's like a whole new layer of understanding their personalities.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why my middle child friend is such a peacemaker.
Oh, yeah.
Always trying to
Smooth things over.
just move things over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just about labels.
Right.
It's about understanding the forces that might be at play in our own lives
Yeah.
and the lives of the people around us.
I love that.
It's powerful stuff.
And get this.
Okay.
Dr. Lemon says that dethronement,
Mm.
that feeling of being replaced when a new sibling comes along,
Oh, yeah.
it can happen throughout life.
Oh, wow. That was a huge aha moment for me
No.
when I read the book.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's
To-
not just about,
To baby coming home.
yeah, a new baby.
It's about that feeling of being displaced or challenged, right?
Yes.
Whether it's at work or
In a relationship.
in a relationship or even with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding this right,
Mm.
like a firstborn might get super competitive at work
Yeah.
because that dethronement feeling
Totally.
gets triggered if they don't get the promotion.
Ah.
That's exactly what Dr. Lemon suggests.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like those early family dynamics
Yeah.
become a blueprint
Yeah.
for how we react to situations later on.
Just like our first experience with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then suddenly those seemingly irrational reactions
Yeah.
start to make sense.
I'm already hooked, and we haven't even gotten to the really juicy stuff yet.
I know.
How this impacts our relationships.
Oh, the best part.
I mean, just think about it.
I know.
Knowing your partner's birth order
Mm-hmm.
could be the key to understanding their communication style
Absolutely.
and why they act the way they do.
And that's exactly where we're headed next time.
Oh, I can't wait.
Get ready to dive into how birth order can shape our love lives.
Oh, yes.
From those initial sparks of attraction to navigating those inevitable conflicts that come up
In every relation.
in every relationship. Yeah,
This is going to be good.
it is.
All right, we'll see you next time. See you then. All right, so we're diving into how birth order can actually impact our love lives.
Ooh, yes.
It's fascinating how these childhood dynamics
I know
can
that.
play out in our adult relationships.
It's like those patterns we learned
Yeah.
in our families become this like blueprint
Yeah,
for how we approach
exactly.
love, conflict, communication with our partners.
Exactly. And Dr. Leman argues that certain birth order combinations
Yeah.
create these like predictable relationship dynamics.
Oh, interesting.
For example,
Yeah.
he's observed that firstborn, lastborn couples
Okay.
often fall into this controller and pleaser dynamic.
Oh, that makes total sense
Right.
when you think about it. Like
Yeah.
firstborns with their need for control,
Uh-huh.
lastborns used to getting their way.
Totally.
It's like a recipe for.
Clashing styles.
But Dr. Lemon's point isn't to say that these relationships are doomed.
Right.
It's about understanding those
Yeah.
tendencies so you can navigate them in a healthier way.
So instead of getting frustrated
Right.
when your firstborn partner tries to
Yeah.
micromanage the vacation itinerary,
Totally.
you can kind of recognize that.
Yeah.
It's coming from a place of wanting to make sure everything goes smoothly,
Exactly.
not necessarily a desire to control you.
Right. It's about understanding the why behind the behavior.
Exactly.
And that's where Dr. Leman's book really shines.
Yeah.
He doesn't just describe the patterns.
Yeah.
He gives you these real-life stories that make it all click.
Like the one about Shirley,
Oh, yeah.
the perfectionist firstborn wife,
Yes.
and her husband George, who's constantly demanding, and she's bending over backwards to please him,
Right.
which left her feeling completely drained and unappreciated.
It's a classic example of how birth order dynamics
Yeah,
can create that imbalance in a relationship.
right.
Shirley, as a firstborn,
Yeah.
used to taking on responsibility,
Yeah.
striving for perfection, but she wasn't communicating her needs or setting boundaries.
And George, we don't know his birth order from the story,
Right.
but it sounds like he wasn't picking up
Right.
on those unspoken cues.
Yeah.
He was just used to getting his needs met.
Exactly. And that's where the awareness comes in.
Yeah.
Dr. Leman helped Shirley and George understand
Right.
how their individual tendencies were creating this unhealthy dynamic.
Yeah.
Once they saw the pattern,
Yeah.
they could start to shift it.
So it's not about blaming your partner
Right.
for their birth order.
No, not at all.
It's about recognizing how those early experiences might be influencing their behavior
Exactly.
and then finding ways to communicate more effectively.
Precisely. And that's why Dr. Leman dedicates entire chapters to each birth order,
Yeah.
going way beyond those surface-level stereotypes.
Right.
He digs deep into the unique strengths and
Yeah.
challenges of each position in the family.
Okay, let's talk firstborns.
Okay. Yeah,
I think they get a lot of attention in the book.
they do.
And I have to admit, it's kind of fascinating
Yeah.
how their whole experience is shaped by that initial period of being the only child.
Right.
The center of the universe.
You have their parents' undivided attention.
Yeah.
They learn to be responsible, take charge, strive for excellence.
Yeah.
But that comes with a potential downside.
What's that?
Perfectionism.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I always thought perfectionism was just a personality trait.
I do too.
But Dr. Leman links it directly to the firstborn experience.
Oh, interesting.
They set the bar high for themselves
Yeah.
because they were often the ones setting the standard for their younger siblings.
Right. They didn't have anyone to model after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like their identity is built around achievement
Yeah.
and being the responsible ones.
Oh, interesting.
And he takes it a step further.
Okay.
He breaks down firstborns into two types:
Oh, okay.
the compliant perfectionist
Mm.
and the aggressive perfectionist.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break it down for me.
Okay, so the compliant perfectionist
Yeah.
is all about people-pleasing, avoiding conflict,
Uh,
often putting their own needs last.
right.
They might overwork themselves, struggle to say no.
I know so many people like that.
Wrath.
Always taking on too much,
Yeah.
never wanting to disappoint anyone.
And while it comes from a good place,
Yeah,
it can lead to resentment and burnout over time.
totally.
Then you have the aggressive perfectionists.
Yeah.
They're more outward focused,
Okay.
demanding.
Uh-huh.
They have a strong need for control.
Got it.
It's less about pleasing others
Mm-hmm.
and more about meeting their own incredibly high standards.
So more the my way or the highway approach.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And while this drive can lead to incredible success,
Yeah,
it can also create friction in relationships if they're not careful.
for sure.
Think about a firstborn boss who micromanages every detail,
Right?
or a firstborn partner who has to have the house perfectly clean at all times.
Okay, I'm seeing the pattern here. But Dr. Leman's book isn't about
It's not about judging.
judging people.
Nope.
It's about recognizing those patterns
Exactly.
and learning how to navigate them.
And that's where his concept of dethronement comes in.
Right.
It's that feeling of being replaced when a new sibling arrives.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Leman says it can have a lifelong impact on firstborns.
This was a mind-blowing concept for me.
I know, right?
So it's not just about a new baby, like stealing your thunder.
Right. It's not just about the baby.
Yeah.
It's about that feeling being reactivated anytime a firstborn feels challenged or replaced.
Oh, wow.
It could be getting passed over for a promotion,
Yeah.
seeing your partner get close to a new friend,
Right.
or even just feeling like your ideas aren't being heard.
Yeah.
It can trigger those same feelings of being pushed aside.
So basically, if you're a firstborn and you suddenly feel that competitive streak flare up,
Uh-huh.
it might be worth asking yourself
Totally.
if those dethronement feelings are at play.
It's like having a new lens to understand your own reactions.
Yeah.
And Dr. Leman gives some really practical advice for firstborns
Okay.
on how to manage those feelings.
Like learning to set boundaries,
yes.
communicate your needs directly,
Uh,
recognize that you don't have to be perfect all the time.
exactly. It's about finding that balance between striving for excellence
Right.
and accepting that things don't always have to go according to plan.
I love that he uses his own wife, Sanday, as an example.
Oh, I love that story.
He tells this hilarious story about how they were at this fancy restaurant
Yeah.
and her salmon was completely undercooked.
Uh,
But instead of sending it back, she just kind of picked at it and didn't complain.
classic compliant firstborn behavior.
Oh my gosh. It's like a light bulb went off for me when I read that.
Me too.
It explains so much about how some firstborns approach conflict.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping things harmonious,
Right.
even if it means sacrificing their own needs.
And Dr. Leman stresses that it's crucial for firstborns,
Yeah.
especially those compliant types,
Right.
to learn to advocate for themselves,
Yeah.
express their needs directly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that resentment can build up over time.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides of
Right.
being a firstborn.
Yeah,
But let's be real.
Yeah.
They also have some incredible strength.
absolutely.
They're often natural leaders,
Mhm.
driven, responsible,
Mhm.
incredibly successful.
Dr. Leman even points out
Yeah,
that a disproportionate number of U.S. presidents have been firstborns.
really.
Yeah, it speaks to their ambition,
Wow.
their drive to achieve, their ability to take charge.
That's crazy.
And he mentions that
Huh?
in the 2008 presidential election,
Okay.
all four final candidates,
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Mike Huckabee, and John McCain,
Wow.
were either only children or firstborns.
That's wild.
Really shows how those early experiences of being the trailblazer in the family
Yeah.
can translate into success in all areas of life.
So interesting.
It's fascinating.
But remember, it's not just about being the boss or the president.
Right.
Those firstborn qualities
Yeah.
can show up in everyday life.
Exactly.
Whether it's being the captain of the soccer team
Uh-huh.
or the friend who organizes all the social events.
Right. That makes sense.
So even if you're not running for office,
Yeah.
those firstborn tendencies can still be playing out
They're still there.
in your relationships
Yeah.
and how you navigate the world.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about Dr. Leman's book.
Yeah.
It's not just about those big, obvious examples.
Right.
It's about recognizing those subtle ways birth order might be influencing our everyday choices and interactions.
I love that.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Okay, so we've unpacked the firstborn experience.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to the middle children.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
ones who often get labeled as the peacemakers,
Yeah.
the diplomats, the masters of compromise.
But there's so much more to them than just being the easygoing middle child.
Right?
Dr. Leman really digs deep
Yeah.
into how their experience of being sandwiched between siblings
Yeah.
shapes their unique strengths and challenges.
All right. I'm ready to hear all about the middle child mysteries.
Okay.
They've always seemed like the most adaptable and laid back of the bunch,
Right.
but I'm sure there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Get ready to have some of those middle child stereotypes challenged
Ooh, I love that.
as we explore the complexities of their world.
All right, so we've gotten to explore the world of firstborns, their drive for perfection.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the middle children, the ones who kind of navigate
Right.
the space between.
They're fascinating
Yeah.
because their experiences can vary so much
Right.
depending on the specific family dynamics.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're custom tailored to fit the gap between their siblings.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that saying, if the firstborn is the thunder, the middle child is the lightning.
Ooh, I like that.
They have to find their own way to stand out.
They do, and Dr. Leman calls them masters of adaptation.
Oh, interesting.
They're often incredibly diplomatic, skilled at reading people,
Yeah.
great at finding compromise, all essential skills for surviving.
Yeah.
And in the middle ground,
It's like they've had years of practice negotiating peace treaties between siblings,
Right.
figuring out how to get their needs met
exactly.
without always being
Right.
the center of attention.
Exactly. And those skills often translate into amazing social skills
Uh-huh.
and a really wide circle of friends.
Oh, that makes sense.
Middle children might not always get the same level of attention from their parents
Right.
as the firstborn or the baby of the family.
Yeah.
So they naturally kind of turn outward to create their own support system.
So it's like they build their own chosen family outside of their immediate household, which makes total sense if you're not getting all the attention at home.
Right.
You're going to seek it out elsewhere.
Exactly. And that can be a huge asset later in life.
Oh, yeah.
Think about all the careers that require strong interpersonal skills, diplomacy, the ability to build bridges between people.
Oh, total.
Middle children often excel in those roles.
So teachers, social workers, therapists, even entrepreneurs who are good at
Right.
building relationships and finding common ground.
It's like their birth order gives them a head start in those areas.
Wow. Yeah.
But there's a flip side to this adaptability.
Okay.
Middle children can sometimes struggle
Mm-hmm.
with feeling like they don't have a clear identity.
Interesting.
You know, they're not the trailblazer like the firstborn,
Right.
and they're not the baby of the family.
Right. Yeah.
So who are they?
It's interesting because I've always seen middle children as the most laid back, easygoing.
Yeah.
But I guess that go with the flow attitude could also come from a place of not being quite sure where they fit in.
Exactly. And Dr. Leman talks about
Yeah.
how this can lead to a feeling of being overlooked or misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know, middle children might feel like their needs and accomplishments aren't acknowledged as much as their siblings.
He even tells that funny,
Yeah.
kind of sad
Right.
story about middle children and family photo albums.
I love that story.
It's like the parents use up all the film on the firstborn.
Yeah.
By the time the middle child came along,
Right.
the camera mysteriously broke.
It's a lighthearted way to illustrate a very real feeling
Yeah.
that a lot of middle children experience.
Totally.
And he gives some great advice
Yeah.
to parents on how to make sure those middle children feel seen and appreciated.
What's the advice?
You know, it's all about recognizing their unique qualities,
Yeah.
celebrating their accomplishments, even if they're different from their siblings.
So instead of comparing a middle child's artistic talent to their older siblings' athletic achievements, focus on nurturing that artistic talent and helping them shine in their own way.
Exactly. It's about appreciating them for who they are,
Yeah.
not for how they measure up to someone else.
I love that.
And that goes for parents, teachers, coaches, anyone who's in a position to mentor or guide a middle child.
It makes me wonder if those feelings of being overlooked or underestimated
Yeah,
fuel that drive to succeed that we see
I think so.
in so many middle children. It's
Yeah.
like they're determined to prove themselves,
Right.
show the world.
Show the world what they're capable of.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And it might explain why so many successful entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
and innovators are middle children.
Yeah.
You know, they've learned to hustle, think outside the box, find creative solutions
Right.
because they weren't always handed things on a silver platter.
And they had to stand out somehow.
They did.
Speaking of successful middle children,
Yeah.
Dr. Leman even brings up Donald Trump
He does.
as an example.
And it's important to note that he's not endorsing all of Trump's behaviors or policies.
Right.
It's simply an observation
Of course.
that Trump, as a middle child, exhibits many of the classic middle child traits.
Yeah.
The negotiation skills, the ability to work a room, and that relentless drive to stand out and make a name for himself.
Oh,
So it's a good reminder that birth order is not about
right.
making value judgments
Yeah.
or saying one type is better than another.
Totally.
It's simply a lens through which to understand how those early family dynamics might be influencing our choices and behaviors.
That makes a lot of sense.
Now, before we wrap up
Yeah.
our discussion of middle children,
Okay.
I think it's important to talk about their potential for self-doubt.
Okay.
Dr. Leman points out that those feelings of being squeezed
Right.
between siblings can sometimes lead to a sense of insecurity
Yeah.
or feeling like they're not good enough.
Especially if they've internalized those messages of being the forgotten child or constantly compared to their siblings.
It can be tough.
Yeah, no wonder they might struggle with confidence.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important
Yeah.
for middle children to focus on their own unique strengths
Yeah.
and accomplishments.
Right.
They don't need to be the best at everything
Right.
or live up to anyone else's expectations.
It's about finding their own path
Exactly.
and defining success on their own terms.
And recognizing that their inherent qualities,
Yeah.
their adaptability, their social skills, their ability to see all sides of a situation,
Yeah.
those are incredibly valuable.
They are.
And those are the qualities that will help them thrive in relationships, careers, and life in general.
I love that.
Okay, are you ready to explore the world of the youngest siblings?
Yes.
The lastborns.
The lastborns. Bring it on.
All right, get ready to unpack those lastborn tendencies
Yes.
from their knack for getting their way to their potential for using humor and charm to navigate even the trickiest situations.
Okay, let's talk about the babies of the family.
Let's do it.
So we've covered firstborns, middle children, now lastborns.
We have.
Dr. Leman, being a lastborn himself,
He is.
probably has some
Wow.
interesting insights to share about this.
He has a lot to say about it.
What does he say?
Well, he describes lastborns as the charmers of the family.
Okay, yeah.
They're often the life of the party. They're witty. They're engaging.
Right.
They know how to work a room.
Mm-hmm.
They've learned to capture attention.
Right, because they're the baby.
Because they're the baby.
They're the family.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And they've often grown up
Yeah.
with less responsibility
Right.
than their older siblings.
So they're a little more free-spirited.
Right. They've had more freedom to explore,
Yeah.
to experiment, to
They've
push the
taken-
boundaries a little bit.
It's like they've watched their older siblings make all the mistakes.
They have.
And-
They've seen the consequences.
What not to do.
Exactly.
Which, honestly, that's pretty smart.
It's very strategic.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
But that freedom can come with a price.
Oh. How so?
Well, lastborns can sometimes struggle with self-discipline.
Oh.
They might have a harder time with things like meeting deadlines,
Right.
staying organized,
Totally.
because they're not used to having as many expectations placed on them.
And they always had someone to kind of pick up the slack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They might have had their older siblings help them with their homework
Right.
or clean up their messes.
Yeah.
So they haven't necessarily developed
Right.
those same skills.
Yeah, they might have a little more trouble
Adulting
in the real world.
in the real world.
Yeah.
But Dr. Leman emphasizes that this isn't about judging lastborns
No.
or saying they're lazy or irresponsible.
It's about understanding
Yeah.
that their strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Are directly related to their experiences growing up.
And I imagine those experiences can also create a lot of resilience and resourcefulness.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they've learned to think on their feet,
Yes.
charm their way out of trouble.
They're master negotiators.
They are.
They know how to get people on their side.
Makes sense.
And that can be incredibly valuable in all sorts of situations.
So those lastborn qualities, like
Yes.
the charm, the wit, the ability to connect with people,
Uh-huh.
those can be huge assets
They can.
in careers like sales, entertainment,
Right.
public speaking, anything where you have to win people over.
Exactly.
It's interesting, though, because there's this kind of stereotype
There is.
of lastborns being spoiled or manipulative.
Yeah, there is that stereotype.
How does Dr. Leman address that?
Well, he acknowledges that lastborns can sometimes be perceived that way
Okay.
because they're used to getting their needs met
Right.
and they might use their charm to get what they want.
Right.
But he stresses that it's not always intentional manipulation.
Oh, okay.
It's often just a natural byproduct of their upbringing.
So they're not necessarily trying to be manipulative.
Not necessarily.
It's just they've learned that being charming
Right.
and persuasive
Gets results.
gets results.
And that's something they've been doing since they were little.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Like their default setting.
It's their go-to strategy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the birth order book, what's the biggest takeaway you hope listeners walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that birth order is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
It's not a deterministic force that dictates our entire destiny.
Totally.
It's a lens through which we can view ourselves and others with a little more understanding.
Yeah.
And a little more empathy.
And maybe even
more
humor.
A little more humor. Exactly.
Because let's be real, these birth order dynamics can be pretty funny.
They can be.
When you step back and look at them.
They're hilarious.
So I would encourage everyone listening to explore their own birth order.
Yeah.
Think about how it might be influencing your relationships, your work, your life in general.
It's a fascinating journey of self-discovery.
It is.
And it might just give you some insights into the people around you.
And make those family gatherings a little more entertaining.
A little more entertaining, exactly.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the birth order book.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of personality and relationships.
Looking forward to it.